Hi, I'm Dan from Cambridge University Press, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to teach remotely with Open World using Zoom, and show you some tips and tricks that you can use in your virtual classroom.
Welcome to my virtual classroom. So before we begin, I'll just take you through the things that you can see on screen, starting in the top right hand corner over here. This is Zoom. This is the piece of software that we'll be using as our virtual classroom in today's video. In the top right hand corner is our participants list. This will show you everyone who's in attendance. Down in the bottom right here is our chat box where you can type messages to students. On the left here is the video, and just below are a number of icons. Now, I will be using some of these icons in today's video, but if you would like more detailed information about how they work and about how Zoom works in general, then head over to the World of Better Learning blog and search for Carol Rainbow's video series on how to use Zoom. In the bottom right hand corner here are the stages of the lesson that we'll be going through today from the How to Teach Remotely with Open World guide. And on the left hand side here are the corresponding pages from the student's book that we'll also be using. Okay, let's make a start. So stage one of the lesson is taking place in the chat box, which is just here. And this is a warmer activity that's asking students to discuss how they're getting on with studying at home and to share how they're feeling, as well as any tips or strategies that they found useful while studying at home. It's also a good chance for you also to recommend other good strategies to them. And I think a really nice chance for you to learn from your students as well, not forgetting that this is a completely new environment for everyone. So by doing this at the start as a warmer is a really nice way of sharing ideas. So if you were to use the chat box, a couple of options here. You might like to pose the questions in the chat box. For example, how are you getting on with studying at home? Or do you have any good strategies for studying at home? And then allowing each student to respond and then dealing with those responses individually. That's also a nice way of capturing some of the responses that students can take away after as well. You may also decide to do this as a group discussion at the start of the lesson, depending on your class, and then again using the chat box perhaps just to capture some of the good strategies that students are suggesting there as well. So a couple of nice ways to approach this warmer. Before going into stage two, I just wanted to make a point about the How to Teach Remotely guide. So we're very much promoting a flipped classroom approach. That is to say that a lot of the exercises in the student's book will have already been completed by the students outside of the classroom. So that allows you then to use the classroom in the live lessons as an opportunity for students to come to check their answers, to ask questions or raise any concerns about any of the exercises that they've done. And it really allows you as the teacher to maximize your teaching and really focus in on the areas that the students may be struggling with. Stage two of the lesson presupposes that students have researched cities that they would like to live in and have prepared a short talk about them. So the first part of this stage is in groups, the students are sharing the cities that they would like to live in. Now, one way you can do this is to use the breakout rooms. If you come up to your toolbar, you'll find it here. And just a quick tip, if you don't see breakout rooms here, go into your Zoom account, click on Settings, and under In Meeting Advanced, you'll see the breakout room. And just make sure this button here is blue. So in your breakout room, decide how many rooms that you want. So for example, if you have 9 students, this number here would read 9. And then what you can do is manually assign each student to a breakout room. You can also change the name of these as well, so group 1, group 2 and group 3. And the really nice thing about the breakout room is that you can go in and you can listen to what the students are discussing, and you can use this as a chance for monitoring, but also you can note down any errors that the students are making as well, so that when you come back into the main room as a whole class, you can do delayed error correction. Now, if you don't want to use the breakout rooms, there is another option. You can take advantage of the shared screen feature. One way you might like to do this is, as a class, you can ask your students to go onto Google and find 3 or 4 images that best represent that city. They can then share their screen and talk through each image. So that's another option you might like to consider. And then at the end, either from the breakout rooms or from the main room, you can bring everyone back together and you can have a class vote where the students decide which city they think was the most popular or which city they found the most interesting. And to do that, you can come back into the chat box, say, you can type in each city, for example, and you can ask the students to respond with a thumbs up emoji and choose the city which they found the most interesting. And then at the end, the winner is the city with the most votes. Stage 3 of the lesson presupposes that the students have completed the vocabulary exercises in the student's book. So if we go over to the student's book, that's this section here on towns and countries, exercises 1, 2 and 3. So the first part of this stage is for the students to check through their answers together. Now again, you can use the breakout rooms. You can assign the students into pairs. They go into their breakout room, check their answers, share their ideas before coming back to the main room for feedback. And when giving your answers and taking questions from the students, you might like to use the shared screen feature. So if you click shared screen here, this will bring up a number of different features, one of which is the whiteboard. And here you can add text, you can draw, you can add stamps, and it's a really nice way of giving answers. It's also a really nice tool for teaching instruction as well. So if you've got a particular language point that you'd like to teach, you can use the interactive whiteboard. And it's also got this save button here. So at the end of the lesson, you can save the whiteboard and send it to your students so they can look at it for reference. The other option in shared screen is to actually share the PDF itself. So what this will do is bring up some options here, one of which is annotate. So if we click this, this brings up similar options to what we've just seen in the interactive whiteboard. And this allows you to annotate the document, but not just you, also your students as well. So together you can annotate this document. So you can ask your students, for example, to type in their answers. They can, perhaps for matching exercises, they can use the draw feature to match parts of sentences or match words together. So some really nice options here as well. And just one more thing as well, because we've got a word pool here. Word pools are also really good for pronunciation work. So what you can do is share your screen and just hover your cursor over the words and ask your students to pronounce them. It's also a really nice one perhaps to see if your students are still paying attention, so you can sit quietly and just hover over each word and ask them to pronounce them and correct accordingly. So some really nice ways there of giving answers and taking questions from students. Stage 4 of the lesson is a group activity where students are writing one word for each letter of the alphabet which are connected to the countryside. So we've got a few examples here: air, butterflies, clean. Now, one option again is to use the breakout rooms, and there's a really nice feature here because we've been given a time limit, or we're giving the students a time limit of 3 minutes. So if you come into the breakout rooms, if you come down to options here, you're given a few options, one of which is a countdown timer. So countdown after closing the breakout room, and you can set the number of seconds here. The other option is to close the breakout room automatically after a certain number of minutes. So for example, we have 3 minutes. Well, that can be done like that, which is a really nice feature. And then after the students have come out of the breakout rooms, they check which group got the most. Now you might like to consider here, again, the shared screen feature. What you can do is assign each group a whiteboard where students can write all of the words that they come up with within that 3 minutes onto the whiteboard, and then back into the main room, they share their screens and you can have a whole screen full of the words that they've come up with, which would be really nice. So they share their words, and then at the very end, of course, not forgetting to praise them all for hopefully having come up with 26 different words. So stage 5 of the lesson presupposes that the students have completed the grammar exercises in the student's book. So if we come over to the student's book, that's this section on the past simple and past continuous here. And there are a few exercises for the students to complete: exercise 1, 2, and on the next page as well, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And there's some pronunciation work in exercises 5 and 6 there to do. Before coming back to the lesson stage, I just wanted to highlight this particular feature here. This is the Grammar on the Move video, and these are special to Open World. So in each grammar section of Open World, you will find a corresponding Grammar on the Move video. These are short instructional videos that teach that particular grammar point. So for example, this Grammar on the Move video here will be teaching the past simple and past continuous. And you might like to consider playing the video at this stage of the lesson. Now, the students may have already seen this video before coming to the lesson, again emphasizing that flipped classroom approach, but you still might like to play it just to re-familiarize them with the past simple and past continuous. And there's a few ways of doing this. You can share your screen and play the video through your computer. If you're doing that, just hit share screen and make sure you take out any headphones as well so the sound plays. The other option might be to share your screen and get the students to scan the QR code here so that they can watch it on their own devices. So a few options for playing the video. Now, in this particular stage, students are checking through their answers. So again, perhaps following a similar approach to how the vocabulary was reviewed using the breakout rooms before coming back to the main room, perhaps using the whiteboard, the annotate tool to check and review the answers and then answering any questions that the students may have. The final stage of this lesson is a communicative practice activity where the students are using the language that they've been taught in the lesson. And in this particular activity, the students are working in groups to create the most imaginative sentences containing the past simple and past continuous. Now, using the breakout rooms, the students can go in, come up with their sentences. You can go in, you can monitor, you can correct language, you can help come up with sentences, for example, before coming back to the main room to share your ideas as a class. Now, when the students are sharing their sentences, there's a couple of things you can do. One, you might like to use the chat box. Students can write their sentences into the chat box, and again, students can vote on the sentences they like the most. You might also like to consider one activity where once the students have created their sentences, you can then give them to other groups who can then go on to create a whole story from those sentences. Again, that would be a really nice way of practicing the past simple and past continuous that they've seen in the lesson so far. Similarly, you can give them an example sentence. So we've got one here. I was running a marathon on my balcony when a pigeon landed on my head. You can give that sentence to the groups and they can come up with their own stories. And it'll be quite interesting to see in what direction they go. And again, it's a nice way of practicing the language, but also a nice way to round off the lesson. So I hope you found that video on how to teach remotely with Open World useful. I hope you've learned some really nice tips and tricks that you can use in your virtual classrooms for delayed error correction, for organizing speaking activities, and for checking and reviewing answers. And I hope it's inspired you to go in with confidence into your virtual classrooms and teach English. So for more information, for more articles, insights and videos, head over to the World of Better Learning blog. But in the meantime, stay safe and thank you very much for watching.